Hello, good day, Professor Jacob Rodgers. My name is Katrina Christian, and I am coming to you. It is Wednesday, September the 13th, and I'm hoping I can do this within 5 minutes. Okay, all right. So, with this assignment, ethical dilemma case study. I decided to read Deuteronomy chapter 7 in its entirety, and it was definitely a great read. And out of that read, I was able to pull out a couple of theories. One theory falling under deontology, which is the divine command theory, and then the other theory I pulled from the teleological category, which I picked. The utilitarian theory. I hope I'm saying this correctly. Okay. And then I picked another theory, which is cultural relativism, and that theory I was kind of wondering should I or should I not, and I was wanted to lean towards as well with the theory that comes from virtue, that comes from the category under virtue theory, when we speak of moral excellence and God's justice and his and fortitude and his temperance and things like that. But I'll stick to the three that I mentioned. So in reading Deuteronomy 7, we're reading Deuteronomy 7 from the ESV version. What I understand here is it kind of breaks down into three categories. Israel being God's special people. In other words, God was reminding Israel who they are. He was reminding them of their identity in him, a holy people, calling them out of nations to be a nation to him, a holy people. And so then he was making sure that they understood that they were to destroy false idols. They were to destroy all the wickedness in the land. God was causing them to move out everything that hated God, everything that was not like God, unholy, they were to destroy it. And God was giving them instructions and commands on how they were to do that. And then God had promised that he was with them. He wanted them to know that he promised to help them. He reminded them of what he did when they were in Egypt, right? And so then he was letting them know, this is what you are to expect if you follow my commands, if you do the things that I tell you to do. In other words, you ain't got nothing but good coming to you, right? And in the opposite of that, if you don't, then there's consequences in that respect. And so I did think about consequentialism as well, right? But then I also remembered what you said in your video in the theories of ethics, Professor Rodgers. I thought about having that superficial and that kind of surface level relationship with God, that I'm just going to do what he tells me to do so I don't face consequences, right? I'm only thinking about the consequences of my action. And so that could be a start, but, for having a healthy relationship that is not just based on the letter of the law, but actually being transformed by God's, word and by his virtue, and by his character. That's a whole nother topic. But in other words, I didn't want to really too much focus on them just doing things because of the consequence of their action. Although the Lord really drove in, consequences, right? Whether they were good or bad. And I do believe that does grasp people's attention when you think about the consequences before you make a decision, right? But we don't want to live in that type of fear of God where I'm only serving him because of what he can give me or because of what he can do to me. I do believe it should be considered. But the theory that really stood out to me the most falls under deontology category, as it speaks about the duty, the obligatory, is that how you pronounce it, or binding responsibility, the moral obligation. And I thought about that because there was so much here in Deuteronomy 7 that the Lord was telling them that he wanted from them, as they were coming into this land that he promised their forefathers. And he was letting them know and giving them instructions on how not to be like the other nations, right? So, for example, in verse 3, he says, don't marry any of them and don't let your sons or daughters marry any of them from those other nations. And then he gave them a consequence. He said, if you do, they will turn your children away from following me, he gave them the outcome of their actions. And then he says, then your children will serve other gods and the Lord will be very angry with you. He will quickly destroy you. That's a strong consequence, so I thought like, whoo, that's scary, And so with that being said, he was letting them know that if you don't listen to me, this is what's going to happen. Your children are going to be led astray and they're going to be destroyed. I'm going to be angry with you because you were supposed to be responsible in making sure that did not happen. And then therefore, I'm going to destroy you. So we got to think about consequences here, right? So I guess consequentialism kind of do play a really big part here, right? As long as you're not doing things just to have some type of superficial relationship with the Lord and your heart really is not in it, okay? And so then I spoke about, I was going back to the divine command. It gave an example even in your theories of ethics and even on page 20